Today, Todd Palin endorsed Newt Gingrich for president. So it's pretty much game over. You want to just keep talking football instead? I kind of want to. But in the unlikely event that the former potential first dude's endorsement does not settle the Republican nominating race, something important is due to begin 3 hours from right now. 3 hours from right now, two tiny towns in the great state of New Hampshire will be the first to start voting in that state's primary. They will be voting just after midnight Eastern tonight. Dixville Notch, up there toward the top of New Hampshire, and Hart's Location, right there in the middle of the state, they go first. They vote right as soon as they can, right after midnight. And if past is any prologue, there will be fewer than 40 registered voters from these two towns combined. So once they vote, it is pretty easy and pretty quick to count who they have voted for. And look at who they picked last time around. In 2008, Dixville Notch and Hart's Location both picked Barack Obama in the Democratic primary. In the Republican primary, they both picked John McCain. And in the general election, they both picked Barack Obama for president. So right, and right. What does that mean for their voting this year? It means absolutely nothing. But they did pick the winners last time around. The overall goal of the Republican Party in choosing its nominee this year is obviously to defeat President Obama in the general election. But the controlling dynamic within that process for much of the last year has been Republicans' desire to find somebody other than Mitt Romney to do that. Mr. Romney has had everything going for him in this race. He has been the prohibitive favorite since before the race even began. And while he leads basically everywhere, including New Hampshire, Mr. Romney's ascendance to the probable nomination has been marked by a solid year of Republicans trying to put their finger on what it is they dislike about him so much, trying to find a viable alternative to Mr. Romney among any of the other candidates in the race, trying to get other people to join the race when they couldn't find a credible anti-Romney among those who were declared. Now, the way that dynamic has played out on a micro level in Iowa, and the one place where we have voted thus far, is that Republican voters in Iowa went through all of these alternatives to Mitt Romney and saw them all knocked down until there was only one guy left. Rick Santorum benefited from basically three things in Iowa. Number one, that overall desire in the Republican electorate for a non-Mitt Romney candidate. Number two, being a candidate who was seen as such a long shot that nobody bothered taking him seriously enough to criticize him, let alone vetting him before the voting started. That helped Mr. Santorum. But the third thing that was really important to his unexpectedly good showing in Iowa was shoe leather. Shoe leather, spending essentially every waking hour in the state of Iowa. For Rick Santorum, that success has not carried over, really, from Iowa into New Hampshire. I mean, he did get a little boost in the polls in New Hampshire after doing so well in Iowa, but the boost was not enough to turn him into a serious frontrunner or anything in New Hampshire or anything close to that. Think about that formula, though, that made Rick Santorum a contender in Iowa. The desire for a non-Romney candidate, the fact that he hadn't been taken seriously enough to get attacked there, and the fact that he burned out shoe leather throughout the state. Think about that formula. Who is now using that exact same formula in New Hampshire? Hello, John Huntsman. When you look at the latest polling out of New Hampshire, Mitt Romney is still way out ahead, but his support has been dropping in the last week, and support for John Huntsman has begun to tick up. Now, nobody thinks that Mitt Romney is going to lose New Hampshire. Mitt Romney, barring a political miracle, will win New Hampshire and win it by a lot. But John Huntsman appears to be in a position to be, like Rick Santorum, the unexpectedly strong second-place finisher there. This is the first time that Mr. Huntsman has had any sort of momentum like this. You may remember that Mr. Huntsman had sort of a buzzworthy launch, but as soon as he stepped into the race, he also stepped on about 1,000 different rakes. I mean, his own campaign spelled his name wrong on launch day. Reporters following the campaign were mistakenly directed to a plane that was heading for Saudi Arabia, remember? Then there were those weird dirt bike ads that nobody understood. All of those things hurt John Huntsman right when the most people were looking at him, right at the apex of his national attention. And then in the debates which have been very widely watched and very entertaining, John Huntsman seemed to go out of his way to be the least entertaining guy on stage. If you remember John Huntsman at all from any of the early debates, this is how you probably remember him. This look. What are these guys doing here? And somebody please tell me I'm sleeping. This can't possibly be my life. In a crazy, entertaining debate environment, John Huntsman had this look on his face. John Huntsman went out of his way to be neither entertaining nor crazy. Also, and I know this is petty, but it has to be said, Jon Huntsman has had really lame campaign signs in New Hampshire. He's had at least 3 different ones in the Granite State. This one, where it sort of looks like the Halliburton logo, kind of. That's the Halliburton logo on one side of your screen, the Jon Huntsman / Halliburton logo on the other one. But at least that one sort of looks tough. Usually this is on a big black background with a big red H, so it sort of looks manly or something at least. The campaign sign that you see the most for Mr. Huntsman all over New Hampshire is a red one. All of the other candidates have these sort of various blue signs. They all look like sort of different types of blue blazers. Jon Huntsman has sort of one that's in a nice red wine color. Jon Huntsman has another sign with his campaign website on it, john2012.com. I follow Mr. Huntsman's campaign really closely, and when I saw a john2012.com sign, I didn't even know that was for him, let alone that it was a campaign sign. I thought it was an ad for some sort of sale at a discount clothing retailer I'd never heard of that maybe only existed in specific parts of New Hampshire. This is not good. And the signs are kind of a sign. I mean, up until very recently, Jon Huntsman has not been a bad candidate in theory, but he has been a candidate with a bad campaign. And that may turn out to be a blessing for him. Because Jon Huntsman's bad campaign thus far has meant that he has been so off the radar that nobody has bothered to attack him. And now, at the exact right moment, if not a little too late, New Hampshire voters are taking notice of him. And they're taking notice of him at a time that nobody has bothered to trash him. It should also be noted that in the last few days, Jon Huntsman has suddenly started running a much better campaign, certainly a much more aggressive campaign. Last week on this show, we reported on the existence of this crazy, racist, cockamamie ad attacking Jon Huntsman that was not from any other candidate's campaign, but it looked like it was from supporters of Ron Paul. The ad called Mr. Huntsman the Manchurian candidate. It criticized him for knowing how to speak Chinese. It cast really gross aspersions on him for adopting daughters from China and India, essentially calling him foreign or anti-American for doing that. It was gross. It was in fact so gross it almost seemed funny before it's just not funny and it's gross again. It's also important to note that campaign, that ad, was not from the Ron Paul campaign. It is out there, though, and it did appear to be from a Ron Paul supporter. And now not only Jon Huntsman himself, but the Huntsman campaign and even Mr. Huntsman's wife have been everywhere criticizing that ad. Governor Huntsman's wife calling it, quote, absolutely disgusting, and using the attack as an opportunity to tell their family story, including the adoption of those daughters. When I saw Jon Huntsman speak on Friday when I was up in New Hampshire, he ended his discussion with a long personal discussion of how much that ad bothered him and how much he loved his daughters and how he and his wife came to adopt them. It was very, very affecting. It was the most emotional and connecting thing that he did in that whole campaign appearance. Here's the thing, though. And this is kind of amazing. The Ron Paul campaign now says that it commissioned a study, an audit, I guess, of where this anti-Jon Huntsman ad came from and who has been circulating it. The Ron Paul campaign says it has looked into where this campaign ad came from and who is circulating it, and they think it's Jon Huntsman. Seriously. Here's the quote from the story about this. After researching the available evidence, we believe it is likely that the video came from a source within or closely tied to the Huntsman campaign. The study they commissioned says the Huntsman campaign website, john2012.com, linked to the video a day before it was picked up on Facebook, on Gawker, on Red State, and elsewhere. So, is the Jon Huntsman campaign so nails that they would use this disgusting ad against their own candidate, both for the attention and to give him the moral high ground? Give him a very, very moral high ground way to talk about his own family background? Could they have even created this horrible ad themselves? That is what the Ron Paul campaign appears to be suggesting. The Huntsman campaign absolutely denies that. But in the history of campaigns, weirder things have happened. Things this outrageous do happen in campaigns. They happen when campaigns are brutally, aggressively, tactically ruthless. It should also be noted that the Huntsman campaign has also turned around another attack against Governor Huntsman, this one from Mitt Romney in the debate on Saturday night. They turned that attack around into probably Jon Huntsman's single most effective moment in the entire campaign, certainly his single most effective pitch for himself as the anti-Mitt Romney candidate. First, here's the attack from Mitt Romney.
I'm sorry. Governor, you were, in the last 2 years, implementing the policies of this administration in China. the rest of us on the stage, we're doing our best to get Republicans elected across the country and stop the policies of this president being put forward.
Mr. Romney attacking Jon Huntsman there for serving as America's ambassador to China under President Obama. That was on Saturday night. This was Jon Huntsman's response on Sunday morning. I could just play it to you straight from the debate, but instead, so you can see how he's using it, I will play it set to music, because that is how the Huntsman campaign is using it in their latest ad. Watch.
This nation is divided, David, because of attitudes like that. Let me say, first of all, with respect to Governor Romney, there are a lot of people who are tuning in this morning, and I'm sure they're terribly confused after watching all of this political spin up here. I was criticized last night by Governor Romney for putting my country first. And I just want to remind the people here in New Hampshire and throughout the United States that I think he criticized me while he was out raising money for serving my country in China. Yes, under a Democrat, like my two sons are doing in the United States Navy. They're not asking what political affiliation the president is. I want to be very clear with the people here in New Hampshire and this country. I will always put my country first, and I think that's important to them.
Jon Huntsman not only shutting down the biggest criticism of him that Republicans have, that he served under President Obama, but also turning that against Mitt Romney in particular. And, it should be noted, implicitly pointing out, in a way that no other candidate yet has, that Mitt Romney, who got a deferment to be a missionary in France during the Vietnam War, also has 5 sons, 5 able-bodied sons who are constantly with him on the campaign trail, but none of whom have served in the military. Unlike, say, Jon Huntsman's sons, who are serving in the Navy. Jon Huntsman does not overtly make that case, but it is there, and they have just made an ad out of it. So who knew? After Jon Huntsman's sort of disastrous launch, Mr. Huntsman is now running a capital C campaign that is super aggressive. He has turned super aggressive in the last few minutes, essentially, before the New Hampshire primary. He has the endorsement of the Boston Globe, which has a strong reach in highly populated southern New Hampshire. He also has the endorsement of the Concord Monitor, which is probably the most influential newspaper inside New Hampshire. So is it too late? Maybe it's too late. But after months of not making a ripple, this is what the crowds look like right now when Jon Huntsman turns up at an event in New Hampshire. Joining us now to tell me that I've got this all wrong and Jon Huntsman is going nowhere is Karen Tumulty, who's the national political correspondent for the Washington Post, who's in Manchester, New Hampshire tonight. Karen, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Tell me how wrong I am. Tell me how Huntsman is still just puttering along and the appearances of an upswing are just are not true.
Well, at this point, there is still such a margin. And it was pretty clear, for instance, in Iowa that Rick Santorum was poised to completely close the gap just a couple of days before. But I had a really interesting conversation today with a very prominent Republican here in New Hampshire. And he was saying one of the problems with Huntsman's whole message, for instance, I served my country, is that he never closes the circle. He never explains why he left the Obama administration, what it was that he saw from inside that administration that really convinced him that he could do things better than Barack Obama is. And I think that the appetite right now among Republican voters is for somebody who will take the fight to Barack Obama. And that is what I think probably Jon Huntsman has not conveyed and has yet to convey.
Is the fight within the within the Republican electorate